Bralettes have become a staple in my wardrobe. I love them because they're so easy to make and they go well with everything. If you want to learn how to sew one or a few for yourself, keep watching this video. To sew this, you need a 1/2 to 1 yard of non-stretch fabric, matching thread, Pellon interfacing, a tape measure, fabric scissors, a sewing machine, pattern paper or fabric, paper scissors if you're going to be using paper for your pattern, a French curve, a pen or pencil, a ruler, an iron, and pins. If you would like to change the playback speed of this video to make it slower or faster, follow these instructions and you can find timestamps in the description box down below just in case you want to skip to a certain part of the video. The first thing I did was to measure from the top of my boob to the base of my boob. Then I measured from one side of my boob to the next side of my boob. I also measured from the center front between my boobs around to my back where I want the bralette to stop. Then I measured from below my boob the width that I wanted the underboob band to have. Next, I took this duck canvas fabric and I drew a horizontal line like this. I measured and marked the boob length from the horizontal line. Then I drew a vertical line to the mark that I made. I measured and marked 1/2 of the boob width from one side of the vertical line. I drew a slanted line to connect these two marks. I found the center of the vertical line and made a mark like this, and then I measured 1.5 inches from that mark and made another mark. I measured and marked 1/2 inch from the other side of the vertical line like this, and then I drew a line from the base mark to the center mark, and then another line from the center mark to the top. Using a French curve, I drew a curved line at the base of the pattern. I used my French curve again to curve the top line as well. I added a 1/2 inch allowance to the straight side of the pattern, and I did the same at the top of the triangle as well. Then I extended the allowance line up to that mark that I made. I also extended the curved line up to that point. I extended the baseline like this and I added an extra 1/2 inch to the bottom of the pattern. I labeled it to say bralette and I added instructions to cut 8 pieces and I cut this from my duck canvas fabric. For the underboob band, I drew a horizontal line the same length that I measured for it. For the thickness of it, I multiplied it by 2 and added an extra inch. I measured that down from the horizontal line and drew a vertical line like this. Once I was done with that, I drew another horizontal line to complete the rectangle for the underboob band of the bralette. This rectangle only represents 1/2 of the underboob band, so I'm adding a fold symbol to it here, and this is going to be great so that you can have reference to fold your fabric whenever you're cutting this pattern piece. I drew and cut 2 rectangles that were both 2 inches wide, and I joined them together at a bias for a total length of 30 inches. This will be cut on the fold, so the fabric piece will be 60 inches when done. These are pretty much all the pattern pieces that you will need for your bralette. For my bralette, I used Chalice fabric, which is pretty lightweight, and I folded my fabric in half and put the pattern piece for the underboob band on it like this. I cut around the edges of the pattern piece using my fabric scissors. And then I folded the fabric again and put the bralette triangles on it like this. If you're using a printed fabric, fold it so that the same thing is on the other side of it when you cut, so that way your pattern will be symmetrical. Cut 8 of these pieces from the fabric. If you're using lightweight fabric just like me, if you want it to be more structured, you can add Pellon interfacing to this. Fold the fabric and place the strap pieces on it like this and cut 2 pieces. But if your fabric isn't long enough, Cut 4 shorter pieces and join them together to make 2 60-inch straps. Cut a piece of pellon interfacing the same size and shape as the under boob band. And cut 2 strips of fabric that are 1.5 inches wide and 5 3/4 of an inch long. Press the bumpy side of the pellon interfacing to the wrong side of the fabric to give it more structure and body. Fold the band in half and press it flat like this. Fold all the raw edges by 1/2 of an inch and press them flat as well. Fold the band in half and press it again. This is how your band should be looking by the time that you are done. To sew the triangles of the bralette together, I put all of these pieces right sides together and I stitched them with a 1/2 inch allowance along the curve. I backstitched at the beginning and at the end in order to secure it. In order to get the seams looking nice and flat, I opened each of them and I used my iron to press them. I cut away the excess fabric at the top of the triangles. You will notice this when you are stitching yours. And then I folded each of the triangles in half along one of the straight edges and stitched darts into them. 2 of your triangles should have darts on the left and 2 of your triangles should have darts on the right. The darts are halfway between the top and bottom of each triangle and they are no more than 1/2 of an inch. Since I had cut multiple pieces for my straps, I am joining them together using a bias like this and I'm sewing them together diagonally. And with that being done, I am now folding the raw edges to the center like this and then folding again and stitching along the open side. I also stitched down the other side of the strap and this is what my straps were looking like. If your straps look like this too, I want you to comment bralette down below. In order to add the straps to the bralette, I took one of the straps and put it at the top of one of the triangles. I pinned it down and then I took another triangle and I put that right sides together with the first triangle. You want to make sure that both of your darts are on the same side when you put your triangles together, else it's not in the right alignment. I used a pin to hold them together along the strap that's on the inside, and I did the same thing with the other 2 triangles and strap. Here I am stitching from one end of the triangle up towards the top, and I stitched with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I positioned the darts so that they were both pointing downwards, and I stitched all the way to the top. I pivoted my fabric to stitch the strap down and backstitch it multiple times in order to make sure that it was secure. I pivoted my fabric again so that I was then able to sew down the other side of the triangle, and once I got to the end, I backstitched in order to secure it. I did the same thing on the other triangle, and then I turned them right sides out like this. I brought my allowance towards the back side of each of the triangle seams and I understitched it. This is what understitching looks like. So you're essentially top stitching an allowance, but you're stitching it to the side that will allow it to look much neater and prevents the sides of the bralette from sliding to the front, therefore creating a much neater finish. I pressed the sides of each of the triangles flat using my iron. To add the band to the bralette, I took the underboob band and I folded it in half and I found the center point. I used a pin to identify that center point. You can use a tailor's chalk if you want to, but then I measured 1 inch on each side of the pin and I put another pin on both sides. So these pins were 2 inches apart from each other. I put the inner edge of each triangle in line with the pins, making sure that the right side of the triangle is facing up. I pinned them into place. I base stitched the triangles into place just so that they would stay put. And then I stitched the 2 small straps the same way that I did the 2 long straps. I cut them into 4 equal pieces like this, and I folded them and stitched them to the band like this as well. I was pretty much just basting them in place so that they would stay put, so that I could then fold the band up and pin it down. I top stitched around the band from one end to the next. I ironed the band in order to make it neater. If this is how you want your bralette to look, you can stop here, but if you want to learn how to add ruffles to it, then you can continue on to the next section. The first thing I did to achieve the ruffle effect was to fold my fabric in half 3 times so that I was able to have 8 layers of fabric. I folded it again 1 more time and I cut along the curve like this. I also cut away the peak of the fabric hair as well. Once I unfolded my fabric, I was then able to cut the 2 circles open like this. And that gave me 2 beautiful pieces of ruffles that I was then able to put together right sides and stitch with a 1/4 inch allowance. I top stitched my allowance just to make it look neater, and then I folded the sides twice by 1/4 inch and stitched them down. I used my serger to finish the top and bottom of the ruffles, but that is completely optional. After I did that, I folded the hem up by 1/4 inch and stitched it down. If you don't have a serger, then fold your hem up by 1/4 inch twice. Next, I press the hems flat using my iron to get an even, neater finish, and then I put the center of the ruffle in alignment with the center of the band. Once that was done, I folded the top edge of the ruffle and placed it at the top edge of the band, and I pinned it into place. With that being done, I was then able to top stitch the ruffles to the band, and I back stitched at the beginning and at the end in order to secure. The thicker the fabric is, the more dramatic your ruffles will be, so keep that in mind. If this tutorial was helpful, give it a thumbs up and watch this playlist if you want to learn how to make yourself some cute crop tops.